Hey everyone, it's about time that a government has the gumption to say we're not going to accept unacceptable risk with AI. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hi everyone, Alan Schimmel here. Happy Wednesday. We have a good Techstrong Gang for you today. I can't wait to jump into it. Let me introduce you to our gang lineup for today. First of all, I guess we'll go to our couple of high rollers out in Las Vegas. Um, seven, right. He
Seven.
pulled them both by the ear away from the crap tables. First, we have our future VP DevOps analyst, Mitch Ashley. Hey, Mitchell, it's good to see you.
It's good to see you from, with my partner in crime, Mike, here in Vegas. We're having a good time.
Kind of our own version of Ocean's 3.5.
Yes, more or less, about 2.5. But yeah.
Yeah, and joining Mitch in Vegas, as we said, is our chief content officer. I heard he was spotted at the sports book making a bet on the Yankees winning the World Series this year. You don't want to say what the odds on that were they, Mike?
I don't know what the odds are on that. I'm going to have to look that up because, truth be told, I've reached that age where I was in bed at 9:00 last night. So there you go.
Well, that's because you got to get up early for today. Welcome and thanks for joining us. From Vegas, we're going to go even further west out to Silicon Valley for our marketing pro extraordinaire and host, Lisa Martin. Hey, Lisa, how are you?
And great to see you. Doing well. Excited to dig into today's topics.
Yeah, we got some juicy stuff to go into. So thanks for coming on. And then joining Lisa and Mike and Mitch is our, I forgot her new title now. Is it managing editor for Techstrong?
Senior managing editor for
Senior managing editor for all of Techstrong publications. Is publication still the right word? Yeah, why not?
Outlets.
Our own outlets. Okay, Amanda Razzani. Hey, Amanda, how are you?
Hello, good.
So congratulations on this new title and role, though truth be told, it's a job you've been doing, I guess, for a bunch now, but congratulations, and a nicer person couldn't have had it. So good for you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All righty. Okay, let's jump into things, Mike. It looks like the EU, look, at least we have one government entity in the world that grew a set. But Mike, you want to talk to us about what the EU has done here?
Yeah. So the EU has said that they are starting to ban AI systems that they perceive have an unacceptable risk. And when you look into what they're talking about, it seems like it's very much driven on the impact it might have on people. So they're going after things like, if you're targeting a particular demographic with some negative content, or if you're trying to manipulate folks in a marketing e-commerce kind of fashion. It seems like it's the tip of the iceberg to me, but Lisa, I know you looked at this and I'm sure marketers are looking at this as well, but what is your take on how broad is this? Is this a signal of intent, or is this something we should all kind of take a little more seriously starting tomorrow?
I think we should all start taking it more seriously. So we've talked about the EU ban on AI systems before on Techstrong Gang. Well, enforcement went into effect a couple of days ago on Sunday, February 2nd. Ironically, Groundhog Day. But what we're seeing with the EU AI Act is it's even stronger than GDPR. For example, fines up to 35.8 million or 7% of global annual revenue from the previous fiscal year. GDPR is about 4% of annual global turnover. And what we're seeing is they really dug into, as you said, Mike, those systems that are deemed unacceptable. For example, those that are attempting to profile people, you said demographics like people with disabilities or the underaged, or predict people might be committing crimes based on appearance. So I think we're going to be learning a lot from them as they really tighten the purse strings here on what is deemed unacceptable. We also heard from a number of tech companies, Amazon, Google, OpenAI. They've all signed a pact that, yes, we will comply. We didn't hear that from Meta or Apple, but I think from a marketing perspective, organizations are going to have to get really crisp and clear on what their AI systems are doing, how they're using data that is acceptable to the EU. And I think we're seeing again the EU lead the charge here. Obviously, we don't have that in the US. So it's going to be an interesting time to see which AI systems start to fall into this category and which things we might start to see shut down.
I mean, I looked at it, and to me, this is some legislation that can be used. I mean, they gave themselves enough rope to use it in a variety of ways. I think one of the ways may be that if you've developed some open source AI system that you're offering as SaaS and hosting it in some country that they deem is not reliable or a security risk, that's an unacceptable risk. And you may see them say something like DeepSeek poses as DeepSeek SaaS hosted in China poses an unacceptable risk to EU citizens. I think that's one way this could go. And I think from what I read about how this legislation's written, that's perfectly within its purview. I think another way I thought about too is if you know, I'm not going to say a bad word. If some president over here wanted to raise some tariffs on the EU, right, or on EU technology or something, I think it gives the EU latitude to say, you know what, US AI-based systems, unacceptable risk, stay out.
Well, that's exactly what happened to Apple. I mean, it was because of the EU AI Act that they said we're not going to introduce intelligence, Apple Intelligence, onto our phones that are being used in the EU. So there's kind of multiple ways this goes, right? There's definitely replications if they find you in violation of something. I think it was the end of the year, the Office of AI or something like that came out with some more definition around what does it mean? What do you have to do if you're in one of these companies creating AI or generative AI systems? And it's still very vague language. It's still things around risk assessment and making sure that you could publish what you've done to try to make them safe. These are always cascading things, right? It's not the initial act that happens. It's what the interpretation of it is over time, and sometimes it's adjudicated. So, but it's interesting to me that it did have a consequence of Apple backing out, saying, "Not until this shakes out. We're not going to be your poster child for violating your regulation."
Yeah, and I think Apple always holds back on a lot of things too. There seem to be the last, even with AI entering into the AI race. It seems like.
Great point. Yeah.
So how far can we take this though? I mean, let's assume that we're Meta for a minute. Meta uses AI to help manipulate its algorithms to market stuff. So will the EU look at Meta and say, that's a violation of this policy because you are manipulating content in a way to create junkies consuming handgun material or whatever it might be. So Lisa, how far can we go?
I think it can actually go pretty far. I think as Alan, you and Mitch have said, there's a lot of latitude here with what the EU has put in place for this first foray of fines with the unacceptable risk. I think there's a number of other things that can be looked at, like I was, looking at predicting people that are committing crimes or using biometrics to infer a person's characteristics, like sexual orientation, for example. So I think there's leeway here that the EU can use against companies like Meta and say, we don't like the way that your algorithms are working. There's biases there that we prohibit. So it's going to be interesting to see who starts to fall victim here and which way that latitude, or maybe think of it kind of like as a pendulum, which way it swings in terms of enforcement.
Yeah, at least I think you nailed it. AI is the next algorithm in terms of being in the crosshairs of regulatory bodies. This is a way of going after algorithms that now are not just reinforced, but actually are AI or becoming
Yeah.
AI very quickly. So I think that's the ripe field that's going to be plowed many times by regulators of going after companies around their algorithms. Now they'll call it AI because that's scarier. and people are already a little bit freaked out, maybe very freaked out about that. So I think it gives them a lot more than latitude, Alan. I think it gives them carte blanche to go after tech companies when they see something they don't like.
Wait, what's that I hear? A wail of despair from all the EU citizens who have missed out on Apple Intelligence. What a nothing
I hear it
burger
all the way
this
here
has
in
been.
Vegas. We hear
Yeah,
it. We
yeah.
hear it. There's
I mean, what a
echoes.
Can hear it here
nothing
in Silicon
burger
Valley.
Apple Intelligence has kind of turned out to be so far.
So,
Wow.
Alan, are we likely to see variations of this legislation in all the states, assuming the national government is not going to be able to
You're
do
talking
anything?
about here in the U.S.? Come on.
I'm
Stop
talking
feeding me
about
red
here in the
meat, Mike.
U.S.
Go
Can I
away.
get 50 versions of this law in the United States?
You're not going to, first of all, you wouldn't get 50 versions because 35 of our states stick their head in the sand about this. They have bigger things to fry about whether people are dressing up or what bathrooms they go to. But here's the key. Don't underestimate the political latitude that this act gives them as well. You're talking about them taking actions against specific companies. I'm telling you, this will be wielded as a nation state tool, right? If in the event of tariffs, trade wars, global competition, right? This is the world. We're heading into the balkanization of the world. This is pre-World War I kind of all over again, where you have a multipolar world. The EU is a power, and they're a power that has political will to act. And that's where I think this is really going to be used. They may paper it over and say, no, it's just DeepSeek, not the Chinese AI, or it's just Meta or Apple, not US AI. But there's a political element to this that if we don't acknowledge, we're kidding ourselves.
That's a great point.
I think
There's a
that's
definite political
absolutely
angle
it.
And
here.
a scary point too.
And if you kind of open the landscape a little bit further, you have the changes to the product liability laws that the EU has enacted that go in effect in a year that expand product liability into software, much more greatly into software, and also to some degree online service providers. So now combine that with AI, right? There's another way to violate any of those kind of things. That's why I think it is just an open field day for regulators and people from now in the product liability side of this to go after companies. So this could turn into big can of you know what.
Yeah. I mean, Mike, to your point though, seriously, you might see a handful of states that enact similar sort of legislation. The usual suspects, California, New York, all of a certain political persuasion, perhaps. Unless some crazy governor down here decides that this is somehow related to wokeness or something, then they'll do something. We love to do stuff around wokeness here, but short of that, the U.S. is not the place for cutting edge legislation enforcement on technology.
Right. So, Lisa, will it become more expensive to market globally because I'm going to have to navigate all these laws, or will I just kind of follow the most stringent and assume that I'm good everywhere else?
That's a really great point there in terms of cost. I think the timing was interesting with the law going into effect for unacceptable risk on Sunday, right on the heels of DeepSeek AI, and that rattled nerves and rattled the stock market. Alibaba with Quen 2.5. I think from a cost perspective, organizations are going to have to really get very clear and crisp in their messaging to understand exactly how they're using data and the algorithms to target audiences with key messages. I think it's something that we'll have to see in terms of cost, but I think from messaging perspective, that has to get much more crisp. And that should be data and information that marketing organizations already have to be able to map against what this unacceptable risk is calling out to ensure that how they're describing how their systems work doesn't fall into that category.
I'm curious if unacceptable risk also expands into what we talked about on the last show. Our phones, our TVs, everything with AI is listening to us and we mention boots and suddenly there's boot ads on the TV, on our phone. It's so weird. And so I wonder if that's going to be deemed unacceptable moving forward, or if that's still going to be just fine.
That's a good point too, because it's so common.
Yes.
You search for one thing and it pops up all over your social, like you said, your TV. All devices are listening. They're sharing information from other nearby devices in terms of that are sharing Wi-Fi. So is that unacceptable? It doesn't sound like it to me right now based on the way that they've defined what the unacceptable risk categories are. But to your point, and what Amanda and what we've been talking about, there's latitude here. So will that eventually become unacceptable? It'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Alan, to your point, though, this not cut two ways? Will not some possibly conservative states or some other countries determine that, wow, what an awesome mechanism for censoring here, and they'll determine that Techstrong Gang is an unacceptable risk, and away we go.
Well, Mike, there's two things that abhor a vacuum: nature and EU regulatory bodies. So I think we'll see
No,
this
I'm,
moving.
like, I can't wait to be Jake and Elwood, the Blues Brothers band in 2 states, 3 states, whatever,
There we go. We
Put
got
on my
both
dark
kinds of music.
sunglasses and hey,
Country and Western.
bartender.
Hey, bud.
I'm sensing another theme here for the next Techstrong
Could
predictions.
be for next year's Predict. Mitchell and I,
Ooh.
Jake and Elwood.
Back to my college band days, we had a Blues Brothers band.
Yeah, we could do that. We could definitely do that. Anyway, hey, I think we're going to take a break here on the gang for today. Let's come back and talk about something else. AI can do good too. It's not all unacceptable risk. We're going to talk about, can AI help us identify or eliminate, I don't know about eliminate, robocalls, the scourge of robocalls. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
All right, to Alan's point, yes, it's true. AI can do good. And one example is this thing called Hiya. It's an app that sits on your phone, and I guess it listens to the incoming call and identifies it, whether it's a robocall or some other scam, and kind of reroutes it and answers it, and actually inquires as to what is the nature of your business with you before you even get involved with this thing. So I guess it's kind of like having your own personal AI secretary, which could be a good thing. And personally, what I kind of like most about this thing is we have found a technological solution maybe to something we've been trying to legislate. And well, we all know how good legislation actually works. So Amanda, what's your take here? I know you've had some fun lately with phone calls and stuff. So as you look at this, what's your reaction?
Well, I think we can all agree that we're getting more and more scams to our phones. I am filtering through daily scams on my phone. Text messages that I'm certain are scams, so I don't click on them. Calls that are lots of robocalls. We're just waiting to finish finalizing your loan, and we just need to. Oh my goodness, the scams are getting better and better, and they sound so authentic. And they come from authentic numbers sometimes, so that's really scary. So I, for one, would appreciate this tool. I would definitely utilize it because they're just getting so good at these scams. I would love to not pick up the phone and hear. It was my son the other day. He answered the phone and he didn't realize that it was AI, but it was one of those robocalls asking for donations for the police force, maybe, I think it was, or the firefighters organization, but it was automated, and he would answer and they would answer back. And finally I told him, hang up.
Wow.
So he finally
That's
hung
scary.
up, but it was a real guy talking to him and responding. And I had to tell him that was not a real guy. That was a scam or it's an automated call. I don't know. I don't trust any of those anymore.
I need to break in, Alan. The spa texted me, wanted to confirm your 1:30 spa appointment today for nails and pedicure. Is
Yes.
that
And
okay?
they have a $5 million loan available to me at low rates.
Headers.
So, but seriously, Lisa, are we on the cusp maybe of putting an end to robocalling, cold calling as a method of marketing? Because the tech was eventually catching up with this.
You know, Hiya also has a solution called branded call for marketers to be able to get noticed by customers, to come across branded as legitimate, because that's one of the biggest challenges that marketers have is as Amanda pointed out, the sophistication of these robocalls and the deep fakes are getting so good. It's really hard to distinguish a lot of times until maybe the last second before you're scammed out of money. And that's what there was a survey that Hiya did with who was it here? I've got it in my notes somewhere. Census wide, that found that 45% of people targeted fall victim and end up spending an average of $7,200 on this. But marketers can obviously trust is currency with customers. So marketers can use Hiya's branded call platform to ensure that their calls are legitimately displayed to consumers so that the chances of consumers falling victim to anything from that company goes down. So it's going to be interesting to see how marketers respond here, but it's incredibly important because nobody wants to have to rebuild brand once brand is damaged. And really, it's all about ensuring that there's trust between a brand and its consumers or its business customers. And that's what one of the things that Hiya can do here is to help brands maintain that legitimacy and that trust to their constituents.
I think it will also help reduce manipulation of society, especially when it comes to government issues, because I get a lot of those scam text messages and calls, robocalls too. Answer this survey or, respond to this issue. So and so says that they want you to vote this way. All kinds of craziness.
So, am I the only one? I will not answer an inbound call from a number I don't recognize.
Same.
And I've also,
My wife's like that too.
and I've also noticed
same.
that, and I didn't do it consciously, but now I text my friends to tell them I'm going to call them so they know it's me for sure.
Do you do that, Mike?
Yep. Like, yep.
Wow.
Because
You just
then
left them a Slack message, they probably answer, but no, they
my
know
friends-
what you
my
actually
friends
want.
aren't on
Wait, did
Slack.
you say Slack and Mike in the same sentence?
Yeah, I guess they'd know it wasn't Mike then.
Yeah, there you go.
That would say, if I get a Slack message from somebody purporting to be Mike Vizard, I immediately put that into my spam.
It's a deep fake.
It's a deep fake. I know it's a good point of like, do you trust anything, right? I don't trust any text messages coming over unless I know I did something to cause it to come to me, or even if it is the spa, the doctor's appointment. As long as I know I've got one, how many times do you get weird things? It's like, it sounds like it could be true. And I don't know why, who is it? PayPal keeps updating their terms and agreements about every 3 days. I get another fake email. You can't tell. It's difficult.
You bring up a great point, Mitch, about the legitimacy. You mentioned, like, I get these robocalls from like my doctor reminding me of an appointment or a pharmacy reminding me of a prescription that's ready for pickup. So brands have to be really careful, and Hiya is a great source for them to make sure that really opt-in offers and opt-out options rather are available, but they have to work to legitimize themselves so that there's value delivered when it makes sense. Like, for example, a doctor's appointment reminder or pharmacy, like I said, or something from your bank, for example, although that can kind of be on the blurry lines there. But the legitimacy has to be verified, and brands need that so that whether it's a hospital organization or a consumer brand, to ensure that their customers are being delivered the right message at the right time in a legitimate way that doesn't cause harm or doesn't, you know, going to cause somebody to fall victim to a scam and pay $7,000.
I think there's a whole
Especially for
market
the
of.
oh, go ahead.
All right, go ahead, Amanda. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, especially for the elderly, they are the ones who fall victim a lot
Definitely.
to these
Yes.
robocalls. And
Yes.
because they've gotten so good, it's so hard for them to to realize that it's fake.
Yeah.
Well, you
My mom
actually
gets a
you're
ton of these
talking
every day.
you're talking about my father-in-law's favorite hobby is he loves these calls and he just sits there and he like tries to stretch them out as long as he can to kind of it's his way of resistance and annoyance and he kind of like just goes round and round in a circle and I'm sure the other person if there's a real person on the other side doesn't really understand or care that but to him that's his daily entertainment these days.
I like to, I confess, I like to do that too once in a while.
No, Mitch.
Why?
Oh, really?
What?
It
You
started
need my bank
becoming
account? How do I get my bank account number to you? How would I do that? Let him go through the whole thing.
So my husband does that a lot, and he'll take on accents too, and
Yeah,
he'll just have so much fun with it.
yeah. I don't know. It's
But Amanda brings up
perverse,
a
I
great point.
realize, but I'm sorry, what, Lisa?
Sorry, Alan. Amanda, you bring up a great point about the elderly. We have to consider all the different generations that are alive today and using technology. I was saying my mom gets a ton of these calls. I don't get as many. I had a morning the other day where I was getting tons of them, and they all come in from my area code. And so an area code I recognize, but I just think, I don't know this number. I'm not expecting any calls, but we have to be really careful of folks that are gullible is not the right word, susceptible to believing, because why would somebody do harm through a phone call or a text message? So that's a concern for that age group of those generations that are potentially victims. And I was wondering in that data that I mentioned, that survey that Census-Wide did with Hiya, and some of the stats, if I can find my notes here, 45% of those targeted for falling victim, and it didn't say age group, but that was one thing that popped into my mind, Amanda, that you bring up a great point
You
there
hear
about
about
those
it all the
generations.
time.
Yes.
Seems like
It's
a great
important.
application for AI agents to, let's stick our AI agent on all those text messages, figure out what's real, what's not.
Yeah.
Maybe it entertains itself talking to the rep on the phone.
Well, it owns it, it makes itself better
Right.
by doing that. Anyway,
Wait. Do the telecom people have a vested interest here? Are they? Because it seems like they're making money on the services they provide to the people who are generating these robocalls. So, might the time be to short some of those stocks because, well, then volume of calls is going to drop.
maybe, there's
I think that's a
always
likelihood.
another scam. The AI is the latest technology that they've sucked into it, but robocalls and fraud and con men and flim flam artists, heck, some even get elected president. It's been going on a long time.
Yeah.
Grifters.
And I think the sophistication will continue to rise.
Yeah. All righty. Let's take a
Yeah.
break here on Techstrong Gang. We'll come back and we're going to talk about closing the software development gap. Is this like a missile gap or what are we talking about? You're watching Techstrong Gang.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right, folks, we're back in to close out the mystery that Alan started with. There's a report out from Broadcom, and they were surveying people and asking them about, well, how closely aligned is your application development team with your product team? Because the product teams are more dependent upon software engineering than ever. And it may not come as a surprise, but there's a huge gap still. And it's been around for a while. And Mitch, I'd love to get your insights here because it doesn't seem to be closing despite all our efforts. So what's going on here? How do we make it better?
Well, this particular survey, talked about value stream management and the potentially of that helping close that gap. I think it was about 2/3 of folks said that they saw a disconnect between the business strategy and software development, which to your point, that's been an age-old problem, right? And there have been some things that have helped us, and things like Agile and DevOps that try to attempt to help close some of that gap. Whether it's a technology solution or not, I'm not sure that that's necessarily the right answer, nor necessarily is value stream management. That comes out of lean manufacturing. And the challenge with value stream management is it has a whole kind of body of, I don't know if I want to call it science, but theory behind value streams and what activities create value and what don't. And you can kind of run down that rabbit trail of what that means. And sometimes that's not productive for organizations. I think the real essence is, are people aligned with their work and the outcome that the business is required? And you can point to whether it's communications and collaboration between organizations and people. Is it compensation, goals, alignments? Is it better measurement and instrumentation of what we're producing out of software and software delivery? I think it's a combination of all those things, and maybe value stream management can help with that, though it hasn't proven out to be a wildly successful sector of the market, in all
Yeah.
honesty.
I mean, it had a moment, I think, and and now people call it flow more than value stream manager, right? They talk about flow, and I think that's a good way of describing it. They talk about the flow of how software gets done, of how product gets done, excuse me, of how teams work together. To me, though, Mitch, this has always been a case of, as Buford T. Justice would say, a failure to communicate, right? And that's at the nitty gritty of it, Mitch. I'll go back to when you or I, where it's still secure, and we knew what we needed in VAM, right? We needed subgroups of groups, because we used to group devices by groups, and then we needed subgroups that we would define on the fly based upon some attribute that would, allow us to group those, because they needed some special remediation or handling or something. And we knew, all of our customers told us this was something we needed. And they're all requesting it. We put it into the next release, because back then we only did a release or two a year. And the engineering team went off and did it, and they came back with something that wasn't really what we, didn't really solve the problem that the customers had identified. And now it was back to the drawing board, which meant another 6 to 8 months before we'd actually see it, in product. And you remember, Mitch, it was
Well, in the words
hard.
of Ronald Reagan, there you go again,
Yeah.
learning engineering.
That was.
Yeah. So Lisa, I'd love to ask you a question about this, because buried in the report is the software engineering teams are saying that the big part of the problem is the product teams just keep changing their damn minds about what they want. So why is that the case? And is it just the requirements documents are a mess because the product people are kind of maybe
It's moving the goalpost.
Moving the goalpost. Alan, you kind of nailed it when you said that this is all about communication. And I kind of think, marketing can be a catalyst here for communication, because ultimately what product teams have to balance is features. Are they technologically possible? Do they align with business goals? And do they meet customer needs? And interestingly, the survey pointed out, and I wrote some stats down, top metrics being employed to justify ROI in value stream management. And these are all things marketing is going to really care about. 67% of the survey respondents said customer happiness, 59% said increased sales, and 53% said better customer support. So the key there is really ensuring that the product folks are communicating properly, getting the customer data and the feedback and the telemetry to understand how are customers using our technologies, what features should we be prioritizing, and then figuring out a way to communicate that effectively. And maybe that's part of how the marketing could be the facilitator of those communications to ensure that the teams are taking the right constituents' feedback into consideration, so that things are much more streamlined and maybe predictable, if you will, in terms of development. So nobody's going rogue. And that's probably pie in the sky. but I think marketing could be a facilitator of that.
I think that's part of the answer, Lisa. It's also kind of moving away from, Alan mentioned flow, which is the term that people use for VSM now. It's recognizing that software creation is a process and things change from the beginning to the end. Part of what Alan, I made light of, but what Alan was describing is, well, what we asked for is not what we got. It was because a lot of things happened in between. Could have been miscommunication, not people not understanding. It could just be compromises that had to be made along the way, and engineering made them because nobody else would, or because they had to meet the date or whatever it is. But it's, in theory, the things around shorter release cycles, smaller feedback cycles, feedback loops, and agile and things like that are all there to help with that. But I think it's kind of but also moving away from the idea of a static product requirements document, right? Hopefully that thing has changed by the time we've released it, because I'll bet the software's not going to be what it was described originally in that document. At least I've never seen that happen. It just, things change and evolve, especially the longer it takes, the more things will change in terms of requirements. That's always been my experience, because the world moves on. It's just, that's the world we live in. So make the process a fluid one and make sure everybody communicate or is in that line of communication of what's happening and why we're changing, what the effects are.
I always say communication is the root of everything. It's key.
Yeah.
One of the things I have learned the hard way is that I'll sit in a room with somebody and say, this is this awesome capability we need. And the IT folks will be like, yeah, that sounds great. And we all agree that this is going to be a thing we're going to do. And I've learned to ask this question at the end of all those meetings. I always go, so how many other things are you working on? And in your mind, how many of those are more important than what we just discussed? Because that tells me whether my thing is actually going to get made or not. Because there's only so many resources that the IT people have to go build something. And if they're spending 99% of their time on 12 other things that are more important than my number 13 thing, I'm never going to see it. And I don't know if the product people understand that that's part of the equation, Mitch.
I think that's a great point. I just wrote an analyst note about this, of AI's impact on development decreased according to the DORA reports, the stability of releases. And I think one of the major factors is it's one more thing, and it takes some experimentation and learning while you're working with AI tools and software. By the way, you're also at the same time doing observability and development. You're moving to cloud native, you're modernizing, the list goes on. It's all those other priorities too, and something's got to give. You can't add just more to the barrel and expect the same amount of output of what you expected at the beginning.
I don't disagree with that either. So quite frankly, I really thought this was a problem that DevOps was going to tackle, right? Because at the end of the day, DevOps is about much better communication. It is about bringing these different roles onto one team, a cross-functional team, so that we'd have better alignment across. And then, just on the way to the movie theater, value stream management came out and said, "Oh no, this is something we do," and that tried to jump on it. And other people said, "Well, let's build a platform that'll keep you on the guardrails, and this way that'll make it work." Everybody tries to put their 2 cents in here with some magic bullet, and magic pixie dust, when really at the heart it is an alignment of communication with an alignment of vision. And I don't know. I don't think AI has a magic bullet to fix this either, though I'm sure we'll see one. But I don't know if we ever really, really fix this, unfortunately.
I'm trying to remember that old Paul Newman movie where there's a line in there about what we have here is a failure to communicate. I forget which.
It was Buford Justice, not Sheriff Justice, the court, man. And it was carry the big stick. He had the big stick.
No, that's a different movie. This is Paul Newman, and he's in jail, and he's escaped. And I know the one you're talking about. That's Buford T. Usher, I think, or whatever. his
Buster,
name-
right? Not Justice.
Yeah.
Justice is in Smokey and the Bandit. Just in case you guys want to do a little movie and trivia, what the heck? We're all over it, right? Anyone out there who can guess the movie Mike's talking about, put it on a comment on whatever platform you're watching it on, and you could win a Techstrong t-shirt. Paul Newman in
Cool hand,
jail.
Luke. Cool hand, Luke.
Cool
Is
hand,
like,
Luke.
Cool hand,
Too
Luke.
late.
That's
Mitchell
it.
got the t-shirt.
ding, ding, ding.
Mitch won the t-shirt.
Mitch, tell the truth. You didn't ask AI for that, did you? While we were waiting?
I can't even spell ChatGPT. I don't know what you're talking about.
All right. Just checking. Otherwise, I was going to have to deem that an unacceptable risk and fine the heck out of you.
7% of my revenue goes to you.
Craziness. Anyway, guys, it's been a great Techstrong Gang, but all good things must come to an end. We've got a lot more on Techstrong TV today. Mike and Mitch, I know you're busy out in Vegas there at the Dynatrace event, so keep us
Dynatrace
posted. Maybe we'll get an update on some of our sites through that. Amanda and Lisa, it's always great having you on. We'll see you on a future Gang episode. For now, though, this is Alan Schimmel for Techstrong Group. Hope you've enjoyed today's Techstrong Gang. Stay tuned for Techstrong TV. We're coming at you, but we're out of here.